Hey everyone, so I'm not sure if this is happening with you all, but I keep seeing this comparison being made between the Markdown version of a website versus the HTML version and which one does an LLM prefer from an optimization standpoint. The underlying thesis constantly presented is that Markdown is just a better version because it's easier for LLMs to consume, process, and as a result, synthesize into an answer. So if you want your website to be more visible in AI search, you should just create more Markdown version of your pages for AI search specifically. Now, to be honest, it's not entirely clear to me why this is not obvious for people to understand, that essentially it shouldn't matter when LLMs were trained on largely the internet, and the internet is pretty much HTML pages for the most part. There's this brilliant research study done by Profound a few months back in February 2026, where they looked at Markdown version of a website and ran a randomized controlled experiment, specifically to understand if having a Markdown version of your website is actually going to increase LLM bot traffic or not. They published this entire research paper. It's a scientific white paper with a lot of data on the same subject. You can go through it if you want. If you don't have a tooth for scientific research, and some of this sounds way too complex, they also have written a blog post that says, we ran a controlled experiment on Markdown versus HTML for AI bots. Here's what happened. And then if you go to this section, it's pretty clear. What they say is that there is no clear winner. Why? Because essentially having a Markdown version of your website is not gonna change everything up. It's not gonna have an impact for the most part. For some background and context, they basically had two different groups of pages. So in total, they had about 381 website pages, and they split it into a control group versus a treatment group. And what they did was just monitor how LLM bot traffic was towards these pages. One being HTML version, similar to what we normally see on websites, versus the other one being Markdown version of the same exact content. In about 3 weeks, between January 19 to February 8th, they measured AI bot traffic constantly to both of these two group of pages. And then when it comes to results, it might look on the surface that the Markdown version had an impact. At least that's what's visible right here. But then if you read their conclusion right here, things become superbly clear. So what's happening here is they have two different charts. One is for median bot visits per page. The other one is average bot visits per page. In both of the cases, it looks like apparently that the treatment group, the Markdown version, had higher LLM bot visits, right? But what's actually happening is that this one is an average and this one is a median. So the average is skewed a little bit because majority of the uplift in AI bot traffic is actually coming from a single page. And that's why if you look at the median, you notice that the Markdown version only got about one extra click compared to the HTML version, which is pretty much negligible and totally random. And they made it pretty clear in the conclusion. At first glance, the Markdown group looks slightly ahead. One more median visit per page, about 16% higher on average. That's average though. But here's the catch. The median page, your typical page, only got about one extra visit. The 16% mean difference is driven mostly entirely by high traffic pages in the tail of distribution. Pages that were already getting lots of bot attention saw more modest gains, while the median page saw almost nothing. Now, if the point is still not very clear to you, imagine the diagram that I have on my screen as a visual representation of the Markdown version of the pages from the Profound study. So imagine that we have all of these bars in blue as pages that were in Markdown version, and then there are all of these 9 typical pages, but this 10th one just had higher number of traffic in general. When we compared the bot traffic within those 3 weeks period, this one page automatically, just for some reason, very randomly, saw an uplift. And maybe other pages also did, but the impact for most of these was just very small. Maybe one extra click here, one less click in some cases, but this 10th page, let's say, a single page, drove most of that uplift. Now, if you're looking at average versus median, median means you're looking at this page in the middle. And this page had only about one extra click, which is again negligible, could be totally random, because many other pages would have also lost traffic. So when we're looking at this chart, it says just one extra click for the page that was in the middle, which again could be very random. But when we're looking at this chart, which says average, it's basically an average containing all of the pages in question. Meaning if we're talking about an average, it will take all of the uplift from this page along with other pages as well, summed up together, but then distribute them equally. So imagine from this one page alone having some higher uplift very randomly again, the entire distribution for these pages in terms of the average uplift rises to this dotted line. So as you can see, the median is here, pretty small, pretty random. The one outlier page out of that entire study just skewed the data in terms of the average, which means now if you plot it on a chart, it will look like something happened, but actually nothing did. That's why typically speaking in any research study like this, when you have an average number, also try to find the median number because that actually completes the story. So if you ask me what the real story is in this data from the performed research, it's actually the fact that majority of these pages didn't even get an extra click. Only this median one did, which could be pretty random since it's only one extra click. And this outlier page was just skewing the data and totally misleading the conclusion for you. And with that said, the true conclusion out of this research would actually be the fact that markdown version of a website of a particular page that you're looking at will have no impact whatsoever on your AI search visibility.